The shuttle dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Danny Brooks saw Station Luminar for the first time. It was massive. The space station stretched across the darkness like a metal city floating among the stars. Thousands of lights blinked along its surface. Ships moved around it like small fish swimming near a whale. Danny had seen big things before. He had watched the colony ships leave Earth orbit when he was a child. He had served on military cruisers during the Mars conflict. But nothing compared to this. The Galactic Defense Academy was home to cadets from across 12 different civilizations. For the first time in history, humans had been invited to join. Katie Marshall sat next to him on the shuttle. She was looking at the station too, but her face showed no emotion. Danny knew that look. It was the same look she had worn during the worst days on Mars, the look of someone who had seen too much to be impressed by anything anymore. "Big place," Danny said. "Big enough," Katie replied. There were 30 humans on the shuttle. All of them were veterans. The Galactic Council had made it clear that they only wanted experienced soldiers for this first integration class. No fresh recruits, no academy graduates. They wanted humans who had already proven themselves in combat. Danny was 29 years old. He had spent 6 years in the Mars Colonial Defense Force. He had fought in the Titan campaign and survived the siege of Olympus Base. The scars on his left arm told stories he never talked about. Katie was 31. She had been a combat medic in 3 different planetary conflicts. She had saved more lives than she could count and watched more people die than she wanted to remember. When the call came for volunteers to join the Galactic Academy, she had signed up immediately. Not because she wanted to make history, because she needed something new to focus on. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. The doors opened and the humans stepped into the station for the first time. The first thing Danny noticed was the smell. It was strange. Not bad, but different from anything he had experienced. A mix of chemicals and plants and something else he could not identify. The air was warm and slightly humid. The second thing he noticed was the aliens. They were everywhere, walking through the corridors, standing in groups, moving with purpose toward destinations Danny could not guess. He had seen pictures and videos of the different species that made up the Galactic Council, but seeing them in person was something else entirely. A group of Valorians passed them. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with silver scales covering their bodies. Each one had 4 arms. They moved with a grace that seemed almost like dancing. They looked at the humans with calm, curious eyes. Behind them came a pair of Crithani. They were shorter, almost human-sized, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. Danny had read that they were telepathic. They could read surface thoughts and communicate without speaking. One of them glanced at Katie and she felt a strange tickle at the edge of her mind. "They are scanning us," Katie said quietly. "Let them," Danny replied. "We have nothing to hide." A Morvathi officer approached to greet them. She was humanoid in shape, but her skin had a rough bark-like texture. Danny knew that the Morvathi could regenerate any injury, cut off their arm, and it would grow back within hours. They were nearly impossible to kill in combat. "Welcome to Station Luminar," the officer said. Her voice was deep and warm. "I am Lieutenant Vortha. I will show you to your quarters. Commander Zeltrix will meet with your group tomorrow morning." The humans followed her through the winding corridors of the station. Other aliens stopped to watch them pass. Danny could feel their eyes on him. He understood what they were thinking. Humans were newcomers. Earth had only developed faster than light travel 100 years ago. To civilizations that had traveled the stars for thousands of years, humans were practically children. Their quarters were simple but comfortable. Each cadet had their own small room with a bed, a desk, and a window looking out at the stars. Danny dropped his bag on the bed and stood at the window for a long time. Katie knocked on his door an hour later. "What do you think?" she asked. Danny turned to face her. "I think they do not know what to make of us." "No," Katie agreed. They do not. I saw the way that Valorian group looked at us, like we were pets that had somehow learned to walk on two legs. Danny smiled. It was not a happy smile. They will learn. That is what I am afraid of, Katie said. The next morning, all 30 human cadets gathered in a large meeting room. Commander Zeltrix was waiting for them. He was Valorian, even taller than the ones Danny had seen the day before. His scales were darker, almost gray, which Danny guessed meant he was older. His forearms were folded behind his back as he studied the humans. "I am Commander Zeltrix," he said. His voice filled the room without effort. "I have led this academy for 60 years. I have trained soldiers from every species in the Galactic Council. You are the first humans to walk these halls." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "Many of my colleagues opposed this integration. They believe humans are too young, too inexperienced, too primitive." He said the last word without emotion, as if stating a simple fact. "I disagreed. I believe every species has something to offer. I hope you will prove me right." Danny felt Katie stiffen beside him. He kept his own face calm. "The training here is difficult," Zeltrix continued. "Many cadets fail. The physical demands are extreme. The mental challenges are greater. You will be pushed beyond anything you have experienced before." Danny almost laughed. He thought about the 19 days at Titan. The frozen trenches, the bodies piled like sandbags, the taste of recycled water mixed with blood. He wondered what Commander Zeltrix considered extreme. "Your first task is simple," Zeltrix said. "Learn, watch, study how the other species train, understand their methods, their histories, their ways of war. Only then will you be ready to show us what humanity can do." The commander dismissed them. As the humans filed out, Danny caught Zeltrix watching him. Their eyes met for just a moment. Danny saw something flicker in those ancient alien eyes. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe just doubt. It did not matter. Danny had been doubted before. On Mars. They had said his unit could not hold the line. They had held it for 3 weeks. On Titan, they had said no one could survive the siege. Danny had survived. The galaxy did not know humanity yet. But it would learn. One way or another, it would learn. The first week at the academy passed quickly. Danny and Katie learned the layout of the station. They memorized the names of the different species. They attended physical training sessions where they ran obstacle courses designed for beings with 4 arms or regenerating bodies. The humans struggled, but they did not quit. The alien cadets watched them with growing interest. At first, they had ignored the humans. The Valorians trained in their own groups. The Crithani practiced their mental exercises in silence. The Morvathi pushed their bodies to breaking points that would kill any human. But as the days passed, the aliens began to notice something about their new classmates. The humans never stopped. During a climbing exercise, a Valorian cadet named Thric watched Danny pull himself up a vertical wall. The wall was designed for beings with 4 arms. Danny only had 2. He should have failed immediately. Instead, he climbed. His muscles burned. His fingers bled. He fell 3 times. Each time, he got up and started again. Thric had never seen such behavior. Among Valorians, if a task was impossible, you moved to a different task. You did not destroy your body attempting the impossible. That was not logical. That was not efficient. But Danny kept climbing, and eventually, covered in sweat and blood, he reached the top. "Why?" Thric asked him later. "The exercise was not designed for your species. No one expected you to complete it. Why did you keep trying?" Danny wiped the blood from his hands. "Because the wall was there." Thric did not understand. He walked away shaking his head, his scales flickering with confusion. In the second week, the academic portion of training began. Every cadet was required to study the military history of all member species. This was considered essential knowledge. To fight alongside allies, you had to understand how they thought. You had to know their tactics, their traditions, their ways of making war. Professor Vanthus taught the history classes. He was Crethani, old even by the standards of his long-lived species. His blue skin had faded to almost white. His black eyes had seen centuries of galactic events. He moved slowly now, but his mind was still sharp. "War is the great teacher," Vanthus said on the first day of class. "Every species learns from conflict. We study our victories to understand our strengths. We study our defeats to correct our weaknesses. By studying the wars of others, we gain wisdom without paying the price in blood." The class began with the Valorians. Danny sat in the back row with Katie, taking notes as Vanthus described 8,000 years of Valorian military history. The Valorians had never lost a war. Their record was perfect. But as Danny listened, he began to understand why. Valorian wars were elegant. They followed strict rules. Before any conflict began, both sides would calculate their resources. They would estimate the probable outcome based on numbers and technology. If one side had a clear advantage, the weaker side would often surrender before fighting even started. This was considered wise, not cowardly. When battles did occur, they were limited. Certain weapons were forbidden. Certain targets were protected. Civilian populations were never harmed. The goal was not to destroy the enemy. The goal was to demonstrate superiority until the enemy accepted defeat. "The Valorian philosophy is simple," Vanthus explained. "War is expensive. Death is wasteful. The best victory is one that costs nothing." Danny looked at the casualty figures on the screen. In 8,000 years of warfare, the Valorians had lost fewer soldiers than Earth had lost in a single year of World War I. He said nothing, but he felt Katie shift beside him. The next day, they studied the Crethani. The Crethani did not fight wars the way other species did. They were telepaths. Their conflicts were fought in the mind. When two Crethani factions disagreed, they would each choose a champion. These champions would meet and engage in a psychic duel. They would attack each other with pure mental force, trying to break the other's will. The loser would submit. Their faction would accept defeat. No blood was spilled, no cities were burned. "This method has served us for 12,000 years, Vanthus said proudly. "Violence is primitive. True power is in the mind." Danny thought about the battlefields he had seen. The broken bodies, the screaming wounded, the smell of burning flesh. He thought about what the Crethani would see if they ever looked inside his memories. On the third day, they studied the Morvathi. The Morvathi were different from the others. They did fight physical wars. Their regenerative abilities made them nearly impossible to kill. A Morvathi soldier could lose both arms, both legs, and still survive. Within days, everything would grow back. Their wars lasted long, sometimes decades. But even Morvathi conflicts had limits. They fought for territory, for resources, for honor. They did not fight to destroy. When one side finally gave up, the war ended. Prisoners were released. Life continued. "We do not fear death," a Morvathi cadet named Vorgan said during the class discussion. "But we see no point in causing death unnecessarily. We fight until the other side admits we are stronger, then we stop." After a week of studying alien military history, Danny had learned something important. Every species in the Galactic Council fought wars the same basic way. They fought until one side proved stronger. Then they stopped. The losers surrendered. The winners accepted surrender. Life went on. It was civilized. It was logical. It was efficient. It was nothing like human warfare. Professor Vanthus announced that the next module would cover Earth. He had spent months preparing the materials. He had reviewed the records that humans had provided to the Galactic Council. At first, he had assumed the records were exaggerated. Perhaps the translators had made errors. Perhaps humans had inflated their history to seem more impressive. He had checked and rechecked. The records were accurate. The night before the Earth History module began, Vanthus could not sleep. He lay in his quarters staring at the ceiling. In 12,000 years of Crethani history, his species had never produced anything like what he had seen in the human records. He thought about canceling the class. He thought about editing the materials, removing the worst parts. But no. The cadets needed to understand their human allies. That was the whole point of the integration program. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn about humanity. Vanthus hoped they were ready. He feared they were not. In her quarters, Katie Marshall was also awake. She sat by her window, looking out at the stars. "They have no idea," she whispered to herself. "They have no idea what we are." 3 doors down, Danny Brooks slept peacefully. He dreamed of Titan, of ice and blood and the faces of friends he had lost. He had made peace with those memories long ago. Tomorrow, the aliens would see those memories too. Not his personal experiences, but the larger history they came from. The full weight of what humanity had done to itself over thousands of years. Danny was not worried. He was curious. He wanted to see their faces when they finally understood. The screening room was full. 200 alien cadets sat in rows of curved seats. The 30 humans sat together near the back. The room was dark except for the massive screen that covered the entire front wall. Professor Vanthus stood at a small podium. His hands trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it. He had given thousands of lectures in his long career. He had never felt nervous before. Today, he felt something close to fear. "Today we begin our study of human military history," he said. His voice was steady, but the humans could sense his unease. "I must warn you, the materials you are about to see are difficult. If you need to leave at any point, you may do so without penalty." The aliens looked at each other with confusion. They had studied 12 different species. Some had unusual customs, some had strange traditions, but none of the previous modules had required a warning. Danny leaned back in his seat. Katie sat perfectly still beside him. The lights dimmed further. The screen flickered to life. The first images showed ancient Earth, primitive humans fighting with spears and clubs. This was expected. Every species had a violent past. The aliens watched with mild interest. Then the timeline jumped forward. The screen showed something called the Mongol Conquests. Cities burned, millions died. The death toll appeared in the corner of the screen. 40 million killed. Several Crethani shifted in their seats. 40 million was a large number. But still, this was ancient history. Primitive times. All species had dark periods. The timeline kept moving. Wars in Europe, conflicts in Asia, crusades that lasted centuries, plagues that killed half the population. Humans kept fighting. Through disease and famine, through ice ages and heat waves, they kept killing each other. Then the screen showed World War I. The images hit the alien cadets like a physical blow. Trenches stretched across entire continents. Men lived in mud and filth for years. Machine guns cut down soldiers by the thousands. Bodies piled so high that other soldiers walked on them. Then came the gas. Clouds of poison drifting across battlefields. Men choking, screaming, clawing at their own throats. The lucky ones died quickly. The unlucky ones suffered for hours. The death toll appeared. 20 million killed. In 4 years. A Morvathi cadet in the front row stood up and walked out. He did not run, but he moved quickly. His bark-like skin had turned pale. The screen continued. The war ended. The humans signed papers. 20 years later, they started again. World War II began on the screen. The alien cadets watched in growing horror as an entire continent fell under the control of a single nation. They saw camps where humans were gathered like animals. They saw ovens, mass graves, experiments that made even the oldest Krathani look away. The word Holocaust appeared on the screen. 6 million killed. Civilians. Children. 3 more cadets left the room. Then the screen showed 2 cities in Japan, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. The aliens watched as single bombs, smaller than a shuttle, destroyed everything. The mushroom clouds rose like giant monsters. The shadows of humans were burned into walls. The radiation killed for years after the explosion stopped. 60 million dead in World War II, in 6 years. Thric, the Valorian who had watched Danny climb the wall, stood up. His scales had turned white. His 4 hands were shaking. He walked out without looking at anyone. 15 other Valorians followed him. But the screen did not stop. Korea, Vietnam. The images showed jungles on fire, children running with burning skin, soldiers coming home missing arms, legs, minds. Wars that lasted decades without clear winners or losers. Wars fought in places most humans could not find on a map. The Middle East. Conflict after conflict after conflict. Bombs in markets, shootings in schools, hatred passed from father to son for generations. The timeline reached the modern era. The Mars Rebellion of 2089. Human colonists fought human soldiers. Both sides were human. Both sides used weapons designed to kill humans. The images showed the frozen trenches of Mars, filled with bodies wearing the same species' face. Katie Marshall closed her eyes. She had been there. She had treated the wounded, saved who she could, watched the rest die. She did not need to see this on a screen. It lived in her memories. The final section showed the Battle of Titan, Danny's war. His unit had held a position for 19 days. They were cut off from supplies, cut off from reinforcements. The enemy thought they would surrender after 3 days. Human soldiers always surrendered when defeat was certain. That was what civilized beings did. The humans on Titan did not surrender. They fought with empty weapons. They fought with knives. They fought with frozen rocks and broken equipment. When they ran out of food, they made impossible choices. The screen did not show the worst of it, but the aliens could read between the lines. 19 days. When rescue finally came, only 14 soldiers remained alive. They had held the position. They had not surrendered. The screen went dark. The lights came on slowly. 63 alien cadets had left the room during the screening. The ones who remained looked broken. Some were crying. Some were shaking. Some sat frozen, staring at the empty screen. Commander Zeltrix stood in the back corner. He had watched the entire presentation. He had not moved. He had not spoken. Now his 4 arms hung limp at his sides. His ancient eyes looked haunted. Professor Vanthus turned off his podium. He had nothing to say. No lecture could follow what they had witnessed. No words could explain what they had learned. Danny looked at the remaining aliens. He saw their fear. He understood it. For the first time, the galaxy had seen humanity as humanity really was. Not as peaceful newcomers, not as primitive children, but as survivors of a brutal world that had never stopped trying to kill them. The Valorians had never lost a war because their enemies eventually surrendered. The Krathani settled disputes with mental duels. The Morvathi regenerated and outlasted. Humans were different. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not settle. Humans kept fighting until nothing was left to fight. They turned on each other with weapons that could destroy planets. And somehow, they survived. Katie opened her eyes. The room was silent. Now they know, Danny said quietly. Now they finally know. The morning after the screening, Station Luminar felt different. The corridors that had buzzed with activity were quiet. Alien cadets walked with their heads down. They avoided the humans. They avoided each other. Danny noticed the change immediately. At breakfast, the dining hall was half empty. The aliens who did show up sat far from the human tables. They ate quickly and left without talking. Katie pushed her food around her plate. She was not hungry. The screening had brought back memories she had spent years trying to forget. She had not slept well. "They are scared of us," she said. Danny nodded. "Can you blame them?" "No," Katie admitted. "I just did not expect it to hit them this hard." The first resignation came at 9 in the morning. A Krathani cadet named Velthus submitted his paperwork to Commander Zeltrix personally. He did not give a reason. He simply said he was no longer fit for military service and asked to return home. By noon, 20 more resignations had come in. By evening, the number had reached 50. By the next morning, 104 alien cadets had asked to leave the academy. Half of all the non-human cadets were gone. Commander Zeltrix called an emergency meeting with his staff. They talked for hours behind closed doors. Some of the instructors wanted to cancel the integration program entirely. Others argued that the humans were too dangerous to train alongside other species. A few suggested removing the human history module from future curriculum. In the end, Zeltrix made no decisions. He needed time to think. The human cadets were told to continue their normal training. They did, but they trained alone now. No alien cadets joined them in the exercise rooms. No alien cadets sat near them in the remaining classes. The station had divided itself without any official order. 3 days after the screening, Thric requested a meeting with Danny. They met in a small observation room with windows looking out at the stars. Thric stood by the window when Danny arrived. The Valorian's scales had returned to their normal silver color, but something in his posture looked broken. "Thank you for coming," Thric said. Danny sat down in a nearby chair. "You wanted to talk." "I wanted to understand." Thric turned to face him. His 4 arms moved nervously, folding and unfolding. "I have not slept since the screening. Every time I close my eyes, I see those images. The trenches, the camps, the bombs. I cannot escape them." Danny said nothing. He waited. "My species has existed for 8,000 years, Thric continued. "We have fought wars, we have killed. But never like that. Never anything like what your species has done." "No," Danny agreed. "Most species have not." "How do you live with it?" Thric asked. His voice cracked slightly. "How do you look at your own history and continue? How do you sleep at night knowing what your kind is capable of?" Danny was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the question carefully. "Because that history is why we are still here," he finally said. "Earth was not a gentle world. Our planet tried to kill us from the beginning. The cold, the heat, the predators, the diseases, everything on Earth wanted us dead. And when the planet was not trying to kill us, we were trying to kill each other." Thric shuddered. "But why? Why fight your own kind so viciously?" "Because we had to." Danny stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the stars. "Your species evolved on a peaceful world. The Krathani developed telepathy and learned to resolve conflicts with their minds. The Morvathi can regenerate from almost any injury. Every species in your Galactic Council had some advantage that made survival easier." He turned to face Thric. "Humans had nothing. We were small. We were weak. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. The only thing we had was our minds. And we used them to make tools, weapons, ways to kill things bigger and stronger than us. But you turned those weapons on each other," Thric said. "Yes, we did. And the groups that were best at fighting survived. The groups that were not died out. For thousands of generations, we bred ourselves for war. It is in our blood now, in our bones. We cannot escape it." Thrix's scales flickered with colors Danny did not recognize. Fear, maybe, or disgust. "Then you are monsters," Thric said quietly. Danny smiled. It was a sad smile. "Maybe, or maybe we are just survivors. The universe is a dangerous place, Thric. Your species has been lucky. You found a peaceful corner of the galaxy. You made friends with other peaceful species. You built a council based on logic and cooperation. He stepped closer to the Valorian. But somewhere out there are things that are not peaceful, things that do not follow rules, things that will not surrender when the math says they should lose. When you meet those things, you will be glad humans are on your side. Thric was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I am leaving tomorrow. I submitted my resignation this morning. Danny nodded. I know. I do not hate you, Thric said. I want you to understand that. I do not hate any of the humans here, but I cannot serve alongside you. Every time I look at you, I will see those images. I will wonder what you are capable of. I will wonder if someday you will turn on us the way you turned on each other. That is a fair concern, Danny admitted. My people have never lost a war because our enemies always know when to surrender, Thric said. We understand mathematics. We understand when victory is impossible. But your species does not think that way. You do not surrender when you should. You do not give up. You fight and fight until nothing is left. He moved toward the door. That terrifies me, Lieutenant Brooks. Not because I think you are evil, but because I cannot predict what you will do. I cannot model your behavior. I cannot understand a species that would rather die than accept defeat. Thric paused at the doorway. I hope I never see humanity at war again, he said. Not because I fear for the enemy, but because I fear what you might become. He left without another word. Danny stood alone in the observation room. He looked out at the stars for a long time. Katie found him there an hour later. Zeltrix wants to see us both, she said. Now. Danny turned from the window. Did he say why? No, but his message sounded urgent. They walked together through the quiet corridors of the station. The halls that had once been crowded with alien cadets were nearly empty now. Half of them gone, Katie said. Just from watching videos. They have never seen anything like us, Danny replied. They have never imagined anything like us. Are we really that different? Danny thought about the question. He thought about Mars and Titan. He thought about his grandfather's stories about wars that happened before Danny was born. He thought about history books filled with blood and fire and impossible survival. Yes, he said finally, we really are. They reached Commander Zeltrix's office. The door was open. The old Valorian was waiting for them inside. Whatever came next, Danny knew the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Commander Zeltrix's office was large but simple. A desk made of dark metal sat near the back. 3 chairs faced it. The walls were covered with screens showing reports and data. One screen showed the number of resignation requests. It kept growing even as Danny and Katie walked in. Zeltrix stood by a wide window that looked out at the stars. He did not turn when they entered. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back. Close the door, he said. Danny closed it. He and Katie stood at attention, waiting. For a long moment, Zeltrix said nothing. He stared out at the darkness of space. When he finally spoke, his voice was different than before. Quieter. Older. I have served in the Galactic Defense Force for 200 years. I have trained soldiers from every species in our council. I have studied the military histories of 400 civilizations. He paused. Nothing prepared me for what I saw in that screening room. He turned to face them. His ancient eyes held something Danny had never seen in a Valorian before. Uncertainty. Do you know what the Galactic Council said when humans first made contact? Zeltrix asked. They said you were primitive, young, amusing. Some council members compared humanity to the Peltari, a species we encountered 3,000 years ago. They were also primitive, also young. They needed 2,000 years of guidance before they were ready to join galactic society. He walked slowly to his desk and sat down heavily. The Peltari never fought a war among themselves. Their planet was peaceful. Their evolution was gentle. They needed our help to understand that conflict existed at all. Zeltrix looked at Danny and Katie. You are nothing like the Peltari. No, sir, Danny agreed. We are not. Sit down, Zeltrix said. Both of you. They sat in the chairs facing his desk. The resignation count on the wall screen had reached 108. I have a question for you, Zeltrix continued, and I need you to answer honestly. Can you do that? Yes, sir, Katie said. Zeltrix leaned forward. Your species has suffered more at its own hands than most civilizations suffer from external enemies. You have tortured each other, enslaved each other, built weapons capable of destroying your own planet. Why? What drives humans to such extremes? Katie looked at Danny. He nodded slightly. She should answer. Because we are afraid, Katie said quietly. We have always been afraid. On Earth, death could come from anywhere. Disease, starvation, predators, weather, other humans. We learned early that the only way to survive was to be more dangerous than anything that threatened us. But you are not on Earth anymore, Zeltrix said. You have spread to other worlds. You have joined a peaceful galactic community. Why do you still fight? Because the fear does not go away, Danny answered. It is part of who we are. We know that safety is an illusion. We know that peace never lasts. So we prepare for war, even when there is no enemy in sight. Zeltrix was silent for a moment. Then he opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a data pad. He slid it across to them. This is my report to the Galactic Council, he said. I was supposed to recommend whether the integration program should continue, whether humans should be trained alongside other species, whether your kind can be trusted. Katie picked up the pad. She read quickly, her eyes widening. You are recommending we stay, she said. Yes. But you also say humans should not serve on the front lines. That is correct. Zeltrix stood and walked back to the window. I have thought about this for 3 days. I have barely slept. I have reviewed everything I know about human history, human psychology, human warfare. He turned to face them again. Half my cadets resigned because they saw what humans can do. They are terrified of you. Not as enemies, but as allies. They cannot understand a species that would rather die than surrender. They cannot predict how you will behave in battle. They fear that if they fight alongside you, they will be swept up in your way of war. Danny nodded slowly. And you think they are right to be afraid? Yes, Zeltrix said without hesitation. They are absolutely right. Humanity is the most dangerous species I have ever encountered, not because you are stronger. You are not. Not because you are smarter. You are not that either. But because you refuse to accept limits. You refuse to quit. You would burn down the entire galaxy if it meant survival. He walked closer to them, his 4 arms moving with purpose now. But that is exactly why I need you. Katie frowned. I do not understand. The galaxy has been at peace for a long time, Zeltrix explained. Too long. Perhaps. The species of the Galactic Council have grown soft. They have forgotten what real war looks like. They fight with rules. They surrender when logic tells them to. They have never faced an enemy that would not stop until one side was completely destroyed. He stopped in front of Danny. But enemies like that exist. Out in the darkness beyond our borders, there are things that do not follow rules. Things that do not accept surrender. Things that will not stop until they have consumed everything in their path. Danny felt a chill run down his spine. You have encountered such enemies? Not yet, Zeltrix said, but I have lived long enough to know they are coming. The universe is too big, too old, too violent for endless peace. Someday, something will come for us. Something that thinks like you do. Something that fights like you do. He placed one of his 4 hands on Danny's shoulder. When that day comes, I do not want humans leading the charge. I do not want you on the front lines, dying in the first wave of battle. Then what do you want? Katie asked. Zeltrix smiled. It was the first time Danny had seen him smile. It was not a happy expression. It was the smile of someone preparing for terrible things. I want humanity to be our last resort, the weapon we keep hidden until all other options have failed. When the Valorians cannot win with strategy, when the Krithani cannot win with mind powers, when the Morvathi cannot outlast the enemy with regeneration, that is when we release the humans. He released Danny's shoulder and stepped back. Because now I understand something that the rest of the galaxy does not know yet. Humans do not fight to win. You fight to survive, and a species that has spent its entire existence surviving itself will never be defeated by anything the universe can throw at it. The room was silent. The resignation count had stopped at 112. Danny stood up slowly. He looked at Zeltrix with new respect. You are not afraid of us, Danny said. You are afraid of what will happen if we are not there when you need us. Yes, Zeltrix admitted. That is exactly what I fear. Katie stood as well. What happens now? The integration program continues, Zeltrix said. The humans who remain will complete their training. You will graduate with the other cadets. You will be assigned to special units, kept in reserve until you are needed. He walked back to his desk and picked up the datapad with his report. And I will send this to the Galactic Council. I will tell them that humanity is not what they expected. I will tell them that you are dangerous beyond anything they have imagined. And I will tell them that is exactly why they should be grateful you are on our side. Danny and Katie saluted. Zeltrix returned the salute with all 4 arms. Dismissed, he said. They walked out of his office together. The corridors of Station Luminar were still quiet. The alien cadets who remained kept their distance. But Danny noticed something new in their eyes when they looked at him. Not fear, not exactly, respect. Katie noticed it too. They are starting to understand. Some of them, Danny agreed. It will take time for the others. They reached a window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, threats were waiting. Things that did not follow rules, things that would not surrender. When those threats arrived, humanity would be ready. Not because humans were stronger or smarter or braver than anyone else, but because they had spent millions of years learning to survive the unsurvivable. The galaxy had finally seen what humanity really was. Some had run away in terror, others had stayed to learn, and somewhere in the darkness, enemies were waiting who did not yet know what they would face. They would learn. One way or another, they would learn. Danny smiled at the stars. Welcome to the galaxy, he whispered. Humanity has arrived.